All right, I need your help. What does carpe diem mean? What does carpe diem mean? Seize the day. I was a freshman in college. I was kind of at a low point already. I had, I share a few of these stories. A girl I really liked broke up with me. I know I keep sharing those. Unfortunately, they're all true. And I was like, I kind of had the blues. It was a tough few weeks. And so an older friend, an older classmate asked me out to lunch. And we were sitting in a food court at the University of Alabama. And this older guy, he didn't really have great bedside manner. And he looked me in the eyes and he said, "Tim, get over it. Carpe diem, man." I don't know what happened, but it's like a light switch went off. I mean, really. I said, you know what? In my mind, I thought to myself, I'm gonna go do something. I am gonna seize the day. We left lunch. I went back to my dormitory, and I started thinking, you know what? What can I do that would make a difference? I really want to do something big here. I already had joined a Christian fraternity on the campus, and in that moment, after my friend said carpe diem, I decided I was going to become president of that fraternity. In less than 12 months, I was elected president, and I really point back to that guy saying carpe diem. Now, before you think I'm bragging about myself, let me share how I single-handedly destroyed that fraternity. True story, before getting elected president, right after that fateful lunch, I was asked to recruit the next round of members. And so I started getting really passionate about it. I mean, really, like all day, all night, I was living, breathing this stuff. And in fact, I'm so serious about it, I got God involved. You know what I'm saying? You get serious about something, you start praying about your goals, like, God, help me recruit this many people. Well, lo and behold, we started getting closer and closer to our goal. Well, people started coming out of the woodwork to congratulate my efforts, right? I mean, giving me high fives, hugs, man. They say, man, you're doing this. We've never recruited this many people before, and it just spurred me on, man. It turned into a flywheel, right? I mean, I was just getting more and more passionate the more compliments I got on that. Well, anyways, we way surpassed my goal. Way surpassed the goal, recruited the most people we've ever recruited before, and just the momentum of that, I got elected president that next semester. Well, after I was president, right, these guys I had single-handedly recruited, they started getting older. Now they were the sophomores and the juniors within the fraternity. Well, as soon as I was finished president, they decided that the people that I recruited were gonna vote to move it from a Christian fraternity to a non-Christian fraternity. And in the end, it absolutely destroyed the fraternity. The people I recruited divided the fraternity, and 15 years later, it's still a mess. 15 years later, still a mess because of the people I recruited. Since then, I've had some self-reflection. I've started asking, okay, what happened? And let me tell you what happened. When I had lunch with my friend, and he said carpe diem, I decided I was going to make something of myself. And I can tell you, I went full-blown selfish ambition. I went full-blown selfish ambition. And then I started having some wins. And people were starting to applaud my efforts. And man, I went full-blown clown in front of people. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I was all out, all prideful. Man, I went fully selfish ambition at that point. And the more applause I got, the harder I worked. And I did not break any rules. I didn't break any laws in recruiting that, but I did go against my better judgment. I know I started recruiting people even if they did not fit the culture of our Christian fraternity, just because I loved the applause of people. I loved it. And since then, again, I don't know, 14, 15 years ago, there's been a passage of scripture, there's been a few quotes from Jesus, and it has brought conviction to my life. It has brought conviction to my life. Anybody here, there's a few passages of scripture that specifically bring conviction to your life? Am I alone on that? Like there's some, right? Like some of it, man, I just generally feel convicted about maybe sin or whatnot, but there's a few verses, right, where Jesus says something, and I'm like, man, he is speaking to me. We're about to read one of those. And honestly, I think you're going to feel like Jesus is speaking to you if you're here and you have ambition. If you're an ambitious person, you're going to feel like Jesus is about to speak to you. If you're here and you feel like you want to be the best at whatever you do, you're going to feel conviction about what we're about to read. If you're here and you feel like you want more in life, you feel like you deserve more, or you should have more, or you should be further along than where you currently are, you're probably going to feel like Jesus is speaking to you right now. But I want you to be encouraged. I want you to be encouraged. Well, first of all, it's always encouraging when Jesus is speaking to us, even convicting us of our sin, of the pride or the selfish ambition in our life. But I want you to be encouraged, because if you're like me, these words we're about to read, it is going to be a breath of fresh air for you. If you want to be the best at whatever you do, if you're a competitive person, if you're an ambitious person, these words from Jesus are going to be a breath of fresh air. I believe it is going to really be that ointment for your soul this morning. We're going to be in Matthew chapter 20, beginning in verse 20. Matthew chapter 20, beginning in verse 20. The words on the screen, let me read this out loud. Here we go. Then the mother of the sons of Zebedee came up to Jesus with her sons. And kneeling before Jesus, she asked Jesus for something. And Jesus asked her, what do you want? And she said to Jesus, say that these two sons of mine are to sit, one at your right hand and one at your left in your kingdom. All right, now I want you to jump down to verse 24. And when the 10 heard it, when the other 10 disciples, when they heard it, they were indignant, they were angry at the two brothers. But Jesus called them all together and said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles, that's the rulers of the people who do not know God, they lord it over them. And their great ones exercise authority over them. It shall not be so among you. But whoever would be great among you must be your servant. And whoever would be first among you must be your slave. Even as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. I love this. In the ESV, right before that, just the editors said, they described this conversation as a mother's request. And I think there's really something quite admirable about what the mother did here. Any moms or dads or aunts or uncles, can you kind of relate to what the mother did here? Right? I mean, it's actually, I get it, right? In fact, I would actually say what the mother did, it's actually a beautiful confession of faith in some ways, right? It says that the mother ran to Jesus, kneeled before Jesus, right? This was before everybody was kneeling before Jesus. She saw it. She got it, right? She saw who Jesus was. She saw that he was the Lord. She's kneeling before him, and she says, Jesus, I want my kids to be great in your kingdom. That's actually a pretty solid confession of faith, right? Like many times as parents, like we want our kids to grow up and like, man, we want them to be great doctors or lawyers or great, in their time, maybe farmers, or maybe in our time, farmers, like, or fishermen. Like the fact that this woman said, hey, I want my kids to be great in your kingdom is actually a beautiful, beautiful confession of faith. Like to some degree, she gets it. Basically what this mother is saying is, Jesus, I want James and John, I want them to be the CFO, and I want them to be the COO under your CEO leadership. That's what they're saying. And honestly, that's not bad. Like I would love to see my children grow up to serve in God's kingdom in a big way. Like that is my prayer for my kids. But as admirable as it may seem to me, Jesus calls foul on it. Jesus calls foul. Jesus sees what the mother and what John and James and probably what all of the disciples want. They wanted a position of honor, a position of prestige. They wanted the popularity of being the number one and the number two. And Jesus corrects them. Jesus says, no, you don't get it. If you're going to be great in my kingdom, you must be a servant. If you're going to be first in my kingdom, you must be a slave to one another. Jesus turns it upside down. He says, listen, you want a prestigious position. It's not going to be like that in my kingdom. If you want to be great, you got to serve one another. You got to serve one another. And I love how Jesus concludes this part. He says, for even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve. Elsewhere, Jesus would say that a servant is not greater than his master. And if our master came here to serve us, we are to serve one another as well. That's what Jesus is saying here. He's saying, listen, I am the Son of God. I am the Son, the Trinity, like the Son in the Trinity. I am God, and I came here to serve. Don't come here asking for a position or prestige, because if the Master has come to serve, you're to serve one another as well. And I love this part of the gospel. The gospel says, listen, we don't work, we don't serve so that God will love us. The gospel says that God already so loves us, then as a response, we serve. Man, I love that. The parents in a room, or babysitters, or aunts or uncles in a room, like you understand this, right? If one of my daughters, if I ever heard one of my daughters say, you know what, I'm gonna clean my room so that maybe Daddy will love me. How would you feel about that? I'm gonna clean my room so that maybe Daddy will love me. Man, that would break any parent's heart. No. What we would like to hear, what would be healthy, is if maybe my 6-year-old Sophia said, man, I know how much my daddy loves me, so I'm going to clean the room before I'm even asked. Now that wouldn't break my heart. That would warm my heart up. I'd probably go back buy her a pack of Skittles if she did that. You know what I'm saying? I would love that. In the same way, I mean, anybody here grateful? Man, we don't have to work to be loved by God, but because we are loved by God, we get to go serve other people. Anybody here grateful for that? Right? Man, I love that Jesus modeled this for us. I mean, this may be one of the best passages of leadership we see in the Bible. That the master came not to be served, but to serve. And those of us who are the master's servants, those of us who follow after Jesus, we are to imitate our master and serve others as well. Let me tell you a true story. 2 businessmen I met is a church I was part of previously, not in the city, so don't start pointing at who you think they are. They're not in this room. True story. 2 businessmen. The first was a younger man. The younger man, we had just concluded a service. I was standing at the front door. People were leaving. And that was just kind of small talking with a group of people. This young businessman, he was in his probably early or mid-30s. He comes up and in a booming voice, a loud voice, and here's what he says to me and to everybody around me. He says, Pastor, I'm a successful businessman, and I have decided to tithe at your church. I mean, he just proclaims it to everybody. Now, we were at New Church, kind of like we are here, and I'm thinking, okay, well, that sounds pretty good. Well, thank you, sir. An honor to meet you. I'm glad you're here. True story. He continues, in front of everybody. He says, some men were born to work. Other men were born to rule. I was born to rule. Now, what do you say to that? I'm like, alrighty then. So nice to meet you. Well, like later that week, at that point, part of my responsibilities was overseeing the finances, and I was curious, after this kind of the pomp he presented himself in, I was curious what just happened here, and so I went and checked the report, and this particular gentleman gave $1. He gave $1. Now listen. If his income for that week or that month was $10, that'd be an obedient sacrificial gift, right? That's actually what the Bible teaches us with tithing and giving the first 10%. That's what the Bible says. But if you're going to publicly, in front of everybody, say, I am a successful businessman and I'm going to tithe to this church, but then you quietly give $1, man, there's something wrong with that. There's something wrong with that, right? Let me this is not part of the story, but just tell you how the story ends. A few weeks later, he leaves. He leaves our city and moves back in with his parents. True story. Let me tell you about the other businessman. It was an older man. He had joined our first impressions team at that particular church. And I didn't know him yet, and we were having the time of offering at the end of the service, just like we have it here. And just like here, we had those like black offering buckets. You know what I'm talking about? They're black, they're kind of cylinder. And during the time of offering, one of the buckets dropped. It fell on the ground. Two people dropped the bucket. And this volunteer, he was passing the buckets. And so I see this older man. He gets down on all fours, and he is chasing that rolling offering bucket all over the auditorium floor. Like every time he reaches for it, it rolls out. And my friends, I can tell you right now, there are few things more humbling than seeing an old man walking around on all fours trying to catch an offering bucket that keeps evading him. I mean, it was humbling. Afterwards, I asked, I said, who is that guy? I want to be sure I tell him thank you for kind of going over and beyond and helping today. And somebody said, you're not going to believe who that is. He is the CEO the CEO of a major corporation. In fact, it's a corporation where I just about guarantee every single one of us have got a ton of their products in our house right now. True story. What was the difference between those two men? Don't answer out loud, but I want you to think for a second. What was the difference between those two business leaders? Those two businessmen, I should say. Let me tell you something. The younger man loved he loved it when other people thought he was great. He wanted other people to think he was great. Now, I got to know the guy over the next few weeks, and I like him. He's got a delightful personality. He loved the applause of man. He wanted other people to think that he was great, and he was successful, and he was generous, and all these sort of things. The older businessman, man, he had his heart transformed by Jesus Christ. This older man, he knew it does not matter what your title is. It doesn't matter what your education is. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what you've accomplished. He knew that if you were going to be great, you had to serve other people. That was the difference. The younger man wanted to be served by other people. He loved it when other people looked up to him. The older man knew it doesn't matter what you've accomplished. If you're going to be great, you got to serve other people. And he knew that because Jesus Christ transformed his life. This morning, I want to ask you, which one of those businessmen characterizes you? Which one of those do you act more like at home? Man, do you love it when people feel like, man, you're just knocking it out of the park at home? Or do you recognize that, man, you are to serve at home? Which one of those two businessmen represent you at your school or at your work? Man, do you love it when people think you're great, or would you rather be great in God's eyes? Which is it for you? What about here at Essential? Love it when people see you doing something? Or do you want to be great in God's eyes? And these are the questions I've been asking myself, and let me tell you, it is convicting to think about that. Can I tell you right now, my own story? Man, too many times I act like that younger leader. I shouldn't even say leader, that younger guy. Let me tell you another story. It's a story of a man named Brian Anderson. Brian Anderson got off work one day. He was driving home, and he saw, as he was driving on the side of the highway, he saw that an older woman was stranded on the side of the road. Her very nice car had broken down, and so he pulled his car over to the side of the road. He stopped, and he got out. Well, the older woman was concerned. Nobody had stopped. It was fairly abandoned. It was just the older woman and this other guy. And by the appearance, Brian Anderson he appeared to be a poor man. He was pretty shabby, and she was concerned. Brian Anderson detected this. He said, ma'am, you got nothing to be worried about. I'm here to help. What seems to be the problem? The older woman described what the problem was, and so Brian Anderson, he climbs under the car, he starts working on it, and actually gets it fixed. He actually gets the car fixed. In the process, he actually hurt his hand a little bit. He actually got even dirtier than he was before, but he got it fixed, up and running. The woman was grateful, and she said, sir, what do I owe you? Thank you. What do I owe you? Brian Anderson said, ma'am, you don't owe me anything. You don't owe me anything. I'm just happy to help. Next time you see someone who needs some help, why don't you help them out? That's all he said. And then he gets back in his car, drives off. The woman gets in her car, drives off. Later, the same day, the older woman, actually stops at a cafe. And she's at this cafe, and there's a waitress, and the waitress just looks, and you can tell she's exhausted. Not only is she exhausted, it looks like she's been working all day. She's dripping with sweat, and she appears to be about 8 months pregnant. She's tired, very tired. But despite being tired, she has the best attitude throughout the whole thing. She's got this pleasant little smile. She's upbeat. She's encouraging. She's really going over and beyond serving people she's taking care of. And the older woman sees this, and she remembers what the man had done for her. And so the older woman just thinks, you know what? Hey, this would be a great opportunity for me to serve somebody else. And so the older woman paid her tab and left a $100 bill. And so the waitress took the tab and the $100 bill, went to the register, got the change. And as she brought the change back, the older woman was gone. But she saw a note. And the note simply said this: somebody helped me out today, and I want to return the favor, keep the change. And underneath that letter was actually an additional $100 bills. Not a bad tip. Well, the waitress finishes her shift and heads on home. And she gets on home. Her husband's already there. In fact, the husband's actually already headed to bed and is laying in bed. And the woman, so excited to tell her husband about what's happened. The finances have been tight, and the husband's obviously been quite concerned about this, especially with the next child, with the child coming. And so the waitress goes to her husband, tells him the good news, and they're just celebrating. And then the waitress, the wife, leans in, gives her husband a kiss, says, "Everything is going to be okay. I love you so much, Brian Anderson." It's a pretty powerful story if you think about it. You know, this is exactly what Jesus is telling us right here. Jesus is saying, listen, leave your selfish ambition behind. Serve one another. I'll take care of the rest. That's what he's saying. Man, listen, we have this ambition, we have this pride, we have all these things because we're trying to secure our own future. Jesus is saying, no. It's not going to be like that in my kingdom. Jesus is saying, listen, serve one another and trust me with the rest. In Matthew chapter 6, verse 33, Jesus actually says this, just a paraphrase. It says this: seek God, and God will give you what you need. And he's saying the very same thing to us this morning. He's saying the very same thing to us this morning. In God's kingdom, we are to serve one another, and we are to trust God with the rest. If you're here, if you're one of our difference makers, if you're one of our volunteers, I want to say thank you. Our difference makers, they serve us so well. On behalf of all of our difference makers, can we tell them thank you? Hey, thank you guys, seriously. Our difference makers, man, they are the ones who are watching and teaching the children right now. Our difference makers have led us in worship and are leading in the production. They made the coffee. They set things up. They'll tear things down while you're already at lunch. Like our difference makers take care of us during the week. Our difference makers help lead our community groups. Our difference makers help in a number of leadership teams. Our difference makers are preparing the new building. Our difference makers do so much to serve us. Man, I'm grateful. And I want to say this, like if you're a difference maker, man, like you get that. Man, you are moving in that right direction, and in God's eyes and God's kingdom, man, you are becoming great in that regard. And I want to thank you. I want to thank you. Man, I know serving is tough. If it was easy, like everybody would be doing it. And I do want to thank you for that. And this morning, I just want to invite you, like if you're here and, man, you're not serving, I want to say this. As Christ followers, man, we are to serve one another. And honestly, I just want to submit to you this morning, I believe that starts first with our brothers and sisters in Jesus Christ. I think we should have a lifestyle of serving. Serving others, becoming great in God's kingdom, as Jesus says. Man, it's not just at church. Man, it's everywhere we go. But I believe it should start first and foremost with our brothers and sisters in Jesus Christ. And if you're here and, man, you would like to begin serving, I want to invite you into that. Man, this is not an arm twist. If you got a good excuse not to, man, and I don't mean that sarcastically, if you have a good reason, like, man, I can't do that, man, I'm all about that. But man, if you want to invite, if you want to take a next step in becoming great in God's kingdom by serving other people, as Jesus has told us to do, I want to invite you to do that. I do want to give you an opportunity to do that. And I want to invite everybody, if you're a difference maker or not a difference maker, if you're just here for the first time, if I've already run you off and you're never coming back, I want everybody take out that white connection card that was in the program. The white connection card that was in the program. Everybody, I can see you. Nobody's going for it. Go for that white connection card that was in the program, if you got one. Somebody wave in the air. Jeanette, wave in the air. Everybody got there? All right, here's the thing. All right, that side, somebody wave it. All right, good job. All right, nice. Towards the bottom, there's a list of all of our different teams. And if you would like an opportunity to begin serving others, circle one of those teams that interest you. Circle one of those teams. Somebody from that team will contact you this week if you'd like to do that. If you're not sure what to do, if you're like, man, you know what? Like, yes, I see that the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve. And the servant's not greater than the master. And if the master came to serve us, and I need to be serving, if you'd like to serve, but you don't have any clue of what to do that, man, I'd like to steer you in one of two directions. Man, I'd love to invite you to be part of our kids' ministry or our First Impressions. Man, God is doing incredible things. Our family ministry is growing like crazy. Man, I am actually praying that God would rise up other people from within Essential Church to begin investing in the next generation back there. God is also bringing a lot more people to Essential each week. And man, we just want people, we want to be ready for people, right? We're inviting people, our friends, our family, our neighbor, our coworkers that are coming, and we need to welcome them right. And so I'm just hoping that more people will join the First Impression team and we can welcome them right. Again, I'm not trying to twist anybody's arm. If you're here like, no, I don't need to do this, man, that's good. But if you're looking for an opportunity to serve, man, this is an awesome way to do that. Circle one of those things, turn that card into one of the offering buckets during our time of offering at the end. In closing, I want to take you back to that opening story where I single-handedly destroyed a fraternity. My friends, selfish ambition will do that to you. Selfish ambition will do that to you. I got to a place where I loved it when people were applauding my efforts. I loved it. And I started getting prideful. I started getting cocky. I started getting a little bit out of control. I was doing exactly what Jesus was saying when he said that the Gentiles love lording their authority over others. Let me tell you how that story ends. That story will always end hurting you, people you care about, and a whole lot of others. But I've also found that when we do it Jesus' way, when we lay aside our selfish ambition and we decide, hey, you know what, we want to do it Jesus' way. If we're going to become great, we will become great in God's kingdom, and we do that by serving. My friends, as we serve one another, we get a preview. We get to see what God's kingdom on earth looks like. So this week, man, let's go serve. Let's be great in God's kingdom by serving one another. Let's pray. God, we're grateful for the way you love us. God, thank you. Thank you that you have set it up in such a way that you have set it up, that the Son of Man, that Jesus came not to be served, but to serve. God, how grateful I am for that. And God, I pray that for all of us who are here, anybody who watches the future recording or anyone who's watching live right now, God, I just pray that for us, that we would just develop those daily rhythms of learning to put ourselves second and begin serving others. That we would lay aside those selfish ambitions. We would stop trying to become great in our own eyes, and that, God, we would be great in your eyes. At least in this regard. God, thank you for the way you love us. And God, I just want to celebrate one more time on behalf of myself, on behalf of everybody here. I just want to say thank you. Thank you that we're not here trying to earn your love. We're not trying to earn our own righteousness. God, I just want to thank you that Jesus, because of Jesus' finished work on that cross, because of the way that you love us, we respond by serving. We don't serve so you love us. And if there's anybody in the room today who's a little confused on that, it's like, man, I'm just not good enough. God just doesn't love me. Holy Spirit, would you do something special in their life, even during this time of response? Show us how much you love us. Remind us how much you love us. God, we thank you, and we say these things in a beautiful, beautiful name of Jesus Christ. Amen. You go ahead and stay in with me. We're going to do something special today. We're going to be having a communion, just a church-wide communion. Communion will be available like the way we've done it in the past. There's 2 stations, one kind of both sides of the stage. And communion is for Christ followers. Jesus said that as we gather, we take communion, or Lord's Supper, or Eucharist, whatever you call it. Here we call it communion. And what we do is that we take that bread, and we remember that Christ's body was broken for us. And we dip it into the cup, into the juice, and we remember that Jesus' blood was poured out for us. And Jesus said that this blood contains the new covenant, that we are saved by Christ alone, by faith alone, by grace alone. And so I want to invite everybody, as you're taking communion, remember what Jesus has done for you. Don't be thinking about what's next. Don't be thinking about tomorrow. And take a moment. Think about what Jesus has done for you as you enter into the communion lines. All right, Ben, take it away.
Come thou fount of every blessing, tune my heart to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. Teach me some melodious sonnet sung by flaming tongues above. Praise the mount I'm fixed upon it, mount of God's unchanging love. Here I raise my Ebenezer, hither by thy help I've come, and I hope by thy good pleasure safely to arrive at home. Jesus sought me when a stranger, wandering from the fold of God, he to rescue me from danger interposed his precious blood. Yes, oh, to grace, how great a debtor daily I'm constrained to be. Let thy grace now, like a fetter, bind my wandering heart to thee. Prone to wander, Lord, I feel, prone to leave the God I love. Here's my heart, Lord, take and seal it for thy courts Sing that one more time together. God, again, we just praise you, Lord. We thank you for who you are, God, and for what you've done this morning. We just ask that as we leave this place, Father, we'd carry that with us. Lord, that as Tim said, God, we wouldn't be focused on selfish ambition or on climbing any sort of ladder or doing better for ourselves, Father, but that we would be focused on you and on your kingdom mindset, God. We love you and thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Be seated.
All right, yeah, go ahead and have a seat for a second because I want to share a couple things before we move into our time of offering. Our time of offering is coming next. If you need to go ahead and complete that white connection card, go ahead and start doing that right now. A couple things that are in your program I want to point out. Number one, something we've never done before, just an opportunity for you to share a story with us. Man, we would love to know what God is doing in your life. Maybe God has used somebody at this church. Maybe God has used something, or God has moved in your life in some way since you've been part of Essential. Man, would you write that down? You can turn this into offering buckets, or if you need another moment to do that after buckets are passed, we also have the offering boxes, the wooden boxes that are around the room, and you can turn those in. The other thing I want to point out is the 15 days of prayer and fasting. We started this last Sunday. How's it going for everybody? Good. Okay, one person said good. Great. We're in the middle of this, and so I'd love for you to. It's not too late for you to go ahead and jump on in if you haven't already started. Here's a list of 4 things specifically that we're praying for. And fasting. I also want to be clear. Some people maybe I wasn't as clear as I could have been last week. Fasting could look different for all of us. I don't know if any of us is actually not going to eat for 15 days, though that could be some people. But just talk to God. What would God have you to do about this? Maybe it is giving up a meal. Maybe it is giving up food for a day. Maybe it's fasting from something else so that you can have more time to pray. I encourage you to join in with us on that. And then I do want to point out here on the bottom. I'm about to describe something. It's going to be wordy. You can find what I'm about to say right here on the bottom. Starting this week, Monday through Saturday, we're going to be meeting here for prayer. So everybody in the church is invited. Love for you to come here. From 7 to 7:45, you can come in the front doors, and then we'll kind of walk in the back together. It's just going to be a time of prayer. There's going to be some kind of guided times. It won't be awkward. You may be thinking, I've never come to a prayer meeting before. It's going to be weird and awkward and all those sort of things. No, it will not be any more weird or awkward than I normally am. Okay, it'll be the normal level of weird and awkwardness. I'd love you to be part of that. We want to come together as a church and ask God to do what only He can do in our church, in our life, in our city, and the people we care about. I'd love for you to come do that. And then we also have a fun surprise. So we'll be here Monday through Friday. And then Saturday, we're going to actually invite everybody. Again, not 7 o'clock. You can see the time here, 9 o'clock Saturday. I'm going to invite everyone to come to the new building. And we're going to have our time of prayer at the new building. And so just keep your eyes and ears open on social media and the weekly newsletter that goes out on Wednesday. And you can find the address and all the final details. So Monday through Friday we'll be here. Saturday we'll be at a safe part of the new building. There's some construction happening, but it'll be a safe place where we'll go over there. And we're just going to come together as a church. I'm really asking you. Again, I don't want to twist anybody's arm on this. But if you're able to come to all of these, great. If you're able to come to 1 or 2, wonderful as well. I'd love for you to be part of this if you're part of this church, if you can do that. Now, as we move into our time of our, actually, one more thing before we move into our time offering, we're also having Essential Growth Track today, number 3. This is a workshop style. It's going to be from 12:15 to 1 o'clock right over here. We'll do a spiritual gift test, and then we'll also do a personality assessment. How has God wired you? So when it comes to serving, we've been talking about serving, how has God wired you so you can play the part we're supposed to play here at this church? We'd love for you to come find it out. It'll be a great 45-minute investment of your time. Again, free, no RSVP needed. Just meet right over here, free lunch and free child care. We'll meet here, but then we'll go to the back. And love you to be part of that. Now, as we do move into our time of offering, I'll say what we pretty much always say about this. I want to encourage you to talk to God about what He'd have you to do with the resources He's entrusted to you. God's got a lot to say about this. The Bible's full of information on how we can be faithful with the financial resources He's entrusted us with. Listen to God, listen, and obey. And my testimony and testimony of many of us here is that you'll never regret doing it God's way. God's way are the paths of life, and you're going to find that's true as you do it God's way. So difference makers, go ahead and come forward and pass those offering buckets. And then, Ben, why don't you lead us in one last chorus, and after the buckets are passed,